welcome to some new sewing ideas. It's end of September and the sun is shining, but the air is quite cool. It is too warm actually to wear a jacket over a dress, but totally without something it isn't right either. That's why I had this idea to make this shawl, this cape, however you want to call it. It keeps my shoulders lovely warm, it keeps my hands warm if they go a little bit cool, and it really covers my back as well nicely. It's really not difficult to make. I will show you how to make the pattern and how to sew this. And this one is a single wearing one. The one I'm going to show you, you will be able to turn over, so you got two different kinds and two different ways of wearing this particular shawl. So why don't we get started and I show you how to do it. Let's go.
So here's the pattern that you will have to draw, that you will have to make. So take a big piece of paper and first of all draw a huge right ankle piece of 36 by 111 centimeters, 36 deep and 111 centimeters long. Now we're looking at my red numbers, please. Before I forget, on all these measurements that you see here, I already allowed 1 centimeter of seam all the way around for the whole shawl that we're making here. So we start with number 1, looking at that. After you draw your right ankle, start on that left bottom side, measure 35 centimeters over and put yourself a first mark there, a cross, a point, whatever you want, on your line of your right ankle. From the number 2, you measure another 46 centimeters down, make another mark, and then you measure 30 centimeters, and that should bring you exactly to the end of your 1 meter 11 lengths when you count those all up. We continue on the right side going up. You need to measure 8 centimeters to make the next point, then you measure 22 centimeters, make the next point, and another 6 centimeters. And again, you should be exactly at the finished line from your right ankle. Now continue on the top towards the left to number 8. There you have to measure 79. You continue to number 9 and you measure 12 centimeters, and you should have 20 centimeters left to reach number 10. Again, your corner of your huge right ankle. And down on the left side, you measure 20, make a mark, and 16 centimeters, and you will be back to your number 1. So these are your main measurements now that you need to have marked. So you can start by first of all connecting number 11 and number 9, because that is the back middle of your stola. After you have that, you continue from the number 11 down to number 2. So there you have to draw a curve. If you start on the 11, start at first there creating a right ankle, and then you do the curve as you wish to have it going around for continuation to the next point. But before we do the next point, we have to measure from number 3 upwards 7 centimeters to get point 14. And then you can continue from number 2 to make this curve first outwards and then a little bit inwards, as you can see. Now from number 14, you just draw a straight line down to number 5. Now look again at the top on number 8 and draw downwards and a right ankle on 4.5 centimeters, make another mark from number 8. That gives you number 12 right there. Now you can go to 9 and draw a slight curve from 9 down to number 12. There also try to have a right angle where you got the number 9 joining the middle back where the 29 centimeters are, because they automatically happened, by the way, when you did the connection between 9 and 11. Okay, we look again now after you've done that little curve from 9 to 12. Now you can make a long straight line down to your number 6. That means we're practically finished, besides talking about the shoulder dart that you have to do, because otherwise it would slip off your shoulder off. So what you do is, where you got your mark from your number 12, you draw upwards, or better to say to the left, 2.5 centimeters, make a little mark, and also to the right from the number 12, you make a mark on 2.5 or 3 approximately. So from that right one that you just draw, you measure over 12 centimeters to reach and to get the number 13. In the moment you have that point from number 13, all you have to do is connect the number 12 to the 13 and the dot you made on 2.5 centimeters to the left. And that will be your dart for later on. The only thing left to explain on this pattern now is number 15. I do not give you any big measurements because maybe somebody is not so firm with sewing yet and don't even want to put a pocket in. But if you want to put one in, I draw mine on 31 centimeters from the right bottom upwards, and the other line just to the left that you see is for the other side of the pocket from the little Stola, which I wanted a little bit higher than the other one. But that is about all for now, and I also explain it to you right now on the original size. Maybe you got your pattern now after my explanation already totally finished, but I'd just like to explain or repeat one or two things. You can, first of all, after you marked all your points, you can just do a straight line for the back middle. It's totally straight. To look on the bottom, that's also very, very easy. If you're starting from this point here, it is a total straight line all the way to where your little seam will start here. Just on this other side, it's a little bit different, as we got these 30 centimeters on the bottom here. 7 centimeters we went in there. This part you do straight. Now, in case if you have a tailor's ruler like I got here, then this part is very easy. Otherwise, you will have to do this with some other tools you might have or by hand. However, but if you have one of those, then you can see I can just put this here from that point on and mark the first part to about here. That's approximately from this point to that point, the middle, where you can use that before you turn the ruler around so you get the opposite side of the curve and you continue it there to that point. And then up here you must continue in the same way. You have to choose which angle you would like to do there. And what I didn't mention earlier on, in case if you would like to have the cape going lower down in the back, you can of course make this much longer if you want to. Let's say you want to continue 5 centimeters and then start your round there, but don't go any wider here because then it's lying funny over the shoulder. But this part you can make longer for in the middle and the back. To do this particular stitching off, again, although I think you can see it on my drawing, if you go down 2.5 or 3 centimeters from this point and then go in a right angle over, then you get to this point which you have to make on 12 centimeters from here, and then you just connect those together because this is the amount we have to sew in later on. And this angle as well you should do by hand. And what's very important, these two corners should be here in the right angle because that is right on your neck, the back middle, and that's on in the middle of your, underneath the back in the middle. And if that isn't cut in a right angle in this one, then you get a funny corner when you stitch it together. The other thing I haven't really told you about the sizes
is the pockets, but maybe you don't even want to put any pockets in, but I think you should do if you do this particular cape. In my material of the artificial fur, I will put the pockets about 31 centimeters from the bottom up, and I make them 60 centimeters long for putting the hand in. Then this is also your decision. And on the opposite side, on my amaretta material, I will put it approximately 10 centimeters higher, the pocket, because I do not want to have all my pocket materials lying on top of each other. That might get a little bit too much. So slightly that one put up, I will be on the safe side that it will be really nice. Last but not least, on your pattern, after you cut it out, make yourself lots of marks, depending on how good you are with your sewing. If you're not sure, make marks all over the place into the pattern first, which you have to transfer to your material then for the cutting. And of course they have to be all the same exactly. No, I don't mean on this side, but on your inner and outer material, these cuts will have to be on the same points, as we got to stitch all this together. And if you got no marks whatsoever, you will find very quickly that it's a long way to stitch this, and it wouldn't be fun, it wouldn't be very nice. So I show you which material as I've chosen. This is an artificial fur, and don't get a shock right now, because from this material I had so many leftovers from something else I did a while ago that I puzzled them together. Now look how terribly that looks on that side. But I managed, without throwing this nice material away, I managed to really get enough together for my little pieces to be able to make this. Later on I will clean up those seams very well, as I explained on one of my latest videos to you. Cut a pair from this. If you wish, you can cut the fur. If you have a fur and a different material, you can cut this on both of the sides, not on the bottom, not on the back middle, but on those sides. You can cut it maybe each side 5 millimeters approximately wider, this one, because then the velvet and the hair really nicely, very little rolls over the edges, and that's going to make a real nice look. That's what I've done anyway. I've got it about 5 millimeters each side made wider, but you can also cut it exactly the same size. So you make a pair, then you mark wherever you decided to have your marks for stitching the pieces together. You can see here, that's my markings for later for the opposite one to come together. And of course I marked the seam that I have to make here later on, and I already marked where I want to put my pockets. To do those pockets, as I'm going to show you, you will also need the material for the pockets. If you have enough of your main material, I suggest cut it all the same, out of the same material. One long piece, which can be about 60 centimeters long and about 20 centimeters wide, because I'm making this pocket 16 centimeters and I need at least 2 centimeters on each side to stand over. That means 20 wide and approximately 60 long. And then I'm sure on this side that my lining, my pocket lining, will not go into the bottom seam, which wouldn't be correct. You shouldn't do that. So one pair of this and 2 pockets exactly cut like this. You can also make them slightly smaller, that's also not as long, that doesn't matter. And if you do them from the same warm material, then it's nice and cozy in the winter time when you put your hands inside of this. So that's one side of it. And my opposite side, I've chosen a lovely amaretta material. As well here, I marked my pockets already, but here I'm doing something else. As I'm hoping that my black fur hairs will slightly roll over, I've chosen some black zippers, and I will put zipper pockets into here. So of course I got a pair again cut here. So I need 2 of my zippers. If you only want to put maybe 1 in one side in, that's also fine. All your decision. I marked here for my sewing that I have to do up here. And I cut my pockets slightly wider than my zipper is. You can see this because I like to be able to close the pocket easily. And I only cut 1 piece of for the pocket, and this will be folded over later like that, so that will be the size of my pocket. You can make that longer, you can make it bigger, all up to you, but as long as you're not going widthwise over the sides from your main part, and but it's got to be bigger than your zipper. So 2 parts of the pockets I need, 2 my zippers, and something very important. I made another pattern for this particular pocket to do, and I explain this to you. First of all, you got to know which zipper do you want to put in. Then do a right angle drawing on a nice piece of paper. The drawing should be on each end of the zipper approximately 3-4 millimeters longer on each side. Otherwise you got problems getting around with your pressure foot from your machine later on. And the width also depends on your zipper width, because you got to think of that you also easily can get past with your presser foot, and you also want to still catch the material from the zipper, otherwise it might slip out, which you don't want. So that is the decision first of all. So you draw this right angle, and then before you cut it out, you do an inwards curve towards the middle, not on the ends. This must stay exactly the width as you've chosen this for your zipper, the way you want to do this. But here you make it like on each side approximately a 2 millimeter line in. That's the way you cut it out, and that's the way we're going to sew this, because then the material will never be pulled inside the zipper. Then you would have those funny bagging things hanging around. So you don't have to do it, but I suggest try this once. You will be very, very pleased with how you can do those pockets. Well, I would say, are you ready? Can we finally stitch this lovely piece together? Okay, then let's get to the job. With this particular pocket, I'll show you one of the easiest pockets in general that you can make. I'm doing this in my artificial fur, which is quite a relatively thick fur and really not so easy to work with, but I'll show you how it is easy. So mark where the pocket's got to go. Mark on your pocket lining that you have, which has got to be some of the main material in the middle, or the whole pocket lining can be from this material as well. Then you have very nice warm hands, that's alright as well. And mark exactly in the middle, as this pocket will be like this when it's finished. Exactly in the middle, mark the lengths the pocket put in you like to sew. The same here. Then put right on right side on top of each other, approximately first of all. Now take 2 long pins and put them right through the middle there where you want to stitch later, and do the same on that side. So you got them more or less there in position where it's got to go. Now you could just stitch this now. If I would be on my own doing this now, I would stitch my pocket now. But I'll show you how you can make it easy for yourself. Just take a contrast thread that you have and practically start where your first pin is there. You can take that out right away and stitch across your middle line with a couple of huge stitches. Got problems with your language again.
Some words don't want to come out sometimes over my tongue. I don't know what, must have been the wine I had tonight. So I go here in the ending, and I'm taking that pin out already. Yeah, that's the problem I got. And I just go across anywhere there, it doesn't matter. But now that is held exactly where I marked my pocket on this side as well. And as this artificial fur is a bit similar, like if you work with a velvet material, they like to push against each other, and sometimes it's really not easy to stitch them together in the correct way. So now I'm starting at my first point right here. I don't need to stitch back and forward, I just start sewing there, going along my line about 2-3 millimeters away from my middle line. Getting here to my last point, because that's supposed to be the length of my pocket that I want. I'm pulling that thread out already, and I put about 2 stitches, depends on how big your stitches are at the moment, across. Leave the needles, always when you turn, leave the needles inside the material. And now go along this line approximately 5-6 millimeters, which other words you have, if you have a 5 millimeter foot like me, I have it just running along my first seam there, then I know that is my width. Well, I can now pull it out totally because it's all stitched here already anyway. It's held, so I don't need this little help here anymore that I put in. That's why I make big stitches and it's easily pulled out. But here I know I want to stitch all the way to my mark. Again, here I turn it. I got to do my 2 stitches across again. And I just stitch over a couple of centimeters over my first seam. That means it's held. Now comes the part where you got to be very brave. I like to put this under my machine to hold it, because then I got something to hold against me. Now we got to cut right through the middle. As this is very thick, I will have to do this side first and then the other side, because this is too hard on this small area that I got here. And here at the end, I cut in those little dry angles a little bit in. Now I just turn it around so my machine can hold this for me again. And I do the other side. Take your time. Have some good scissors, so you can really work with the end of the scissors. Not sometimes I see these people that cut in somewhere. They only want to cut a tiny little bit and they're back there. It kills me. It kills me. You can't see there. I can't watch it. Okay, I go here to the end. Cut into my little grooves there. Now I got to turn it because I haven't cut all the way through. As it's just too thick, this material. Yeah, I've been putting all these pieces together as I didn't have enough material for one piece, so I did a little bit of a patchwork. But here you can see I got to cut right through the middle of my 2 seams that I got there. It's a bit thick here. Again, here I go slightly towards my corner stitches, and you got to cut so far in, otherwise it will pull when you finish the pockets from the right side. And we finish it off by cutting this as well. This goes easy now, I got no extra seams there. Just look for your last thread. If you use a tiny contrast thread, you will see it better. So maybe you can do that if you're doing this job the first time. No, now it's easy. The pocket, honestly, the pocket is practically finished, because you take these 2 pocket pieces now. It looks like 2, although it's 1, as we know. You just pull it towards the inside. Now make sure where is the bottom and where is the top from your jacket that you might be doing. You see, it lies flat already. Take this down. Now we look at it from the right side. Can you see how beautiful that looks? That is your finished pocket already. Now all you do is go here
and close your pocket. And I go across here. And I go up here. And now I can go to my overlock. Clean it off if I want to. And my pocket is totally finished. Now look how nice and how easy that was. Now you always have the choice of, if you have artificial fur like this, you can pull all these hairs nicely out of that groove out. Then you won't even see that there's a pocket inside this particular jacket you're going to be doing, or cape or coat or whatever. Okay, we continue.
Meanwhile, I've done my second pocket for the other side. They're both finished now, and we continue. That means now you have to look for the little points you made for your shoulder dart that we got planned to do there. Now, you should not be surprised when, as it's going quite sideways, you can see it on the pattern already. So don't be surprised when you now try to put those two cuts for your dart on top of each other, that they will not be even on the edge. They're slightly, one of them is always sliding away, runs away a little bit. In the industrial places, fabrics, when they do this, they add an extra piece when they cut the material. So it looks, or it will be even on the front edge. But I didn't want to get into this because it would be too difficult to explain it to you in this video. But now I'm using my trick again, as you know about. I'm taking some template. I'm looking where my point is for the length of the dart. And I just go along there. I'm not stitching back and forwards now, but I let the machine just continue a little bit so it's held together. Of course, exactly the same we have to do on the other side, as we got a pair here. There is my dot, and there's my two little cuts. I tried to put them in the right position so it does not turn, that it's really lying straight towards my 12 centimeter point for the length of the shoulder dart. And now it's the opposite. Now the bottom piece is lying slightly backwards, inwards. But don't be bothered about this. This is absolutely correct. There is my point. And important is that you don't let it twist this dart. It must lie flat. On my particular piece here, as I added so many leftover pieces together, that's why exactly in that position I have many seams there. That makes it a little bit more difficult. But and for you it's not so easy to see what I'm doing. I understand that. But you will see it better when I do the amaretta side of the coat, which is the same job for these shoulder darts, but you will see it. So when you got both darts done, then we close the back, the middle seam. As I said before, the width of all the seams all the way around on this part, I added on the pattern that I explained to you by 1 centimeter. So here I got to do my 1 centimeter, and I'm looking right away towards the end to make sure I don't have anything standing over. And if I have the feeling it wants to push me forward with one piece with my material, then again I take my pattern, put it directly under my pressure foot against my needle, and I let the needle exactly run along the edge of the template that I have there. Because it's really working like velvet. It wants to push away, and then you might have something standing over, which we don't want. So the back seam is closed. That means our fur part is totally finished already, and we have to continue with the other part for this shawl. So put this away and we look at the other one.
So here I'm starting the other pocket. As I showed you before, I had my 2 marks there, how long I would like to have this pocket. So take the pocket inlay material, put it approximately in the middle behind that you have on each side, and towards the top about 2 centimeters standing over, and the big pocket piece has got to be facing towards the bottom of your cape. And I put those pins through exactly on my points. Now I take that under my machine, and I take my pocket template, as I explained to you how I made it before, and I'm putting it exactly over my 2 pins. Of course, if you don't like to do it with the pins, you can just as well put some big stitches through first through both materials and hold this in position as I showed to you on my artificial fur as well. That's the same thing you can do. So at least that you must make sure that it doesn't slide away from the position underneath. So put it under your machine and start on any end. It doesn't matter which end you're starting on. Make sure the template will stay in position and that your underneath doesn't slip away now. And just go along the template, holding it well. At a certain point you can maybe take the first pin out, but maybe for you it might be better if you put some big stitching in. Now turn it around. If the template moved, as in my case, put it back in position and hold it back onto the first seam that you got there already. It's got to stay in line. And go exactly in the corners. Have your needle in the material when you turn it around. Otherwise you get some problems there later. Now check again underneath. Make sure you got it all in there. And just go along the curve that you drew onto your pattern here. Again, I go all the way to the end. I turn it around and I check again to make sure it's really in position, my pattern here. And I go exactly in the next corner in. Can be some really little stitches that you make there. Put it in line again and I just stitch over a couple of more stitches over. Now we got to cut this open. Just check again first on this side to make sure that it didn't slip away. You need some material on each side here, and as I mentioned before, this has got to go downwards, this big lining material that you got here. So now we cut this one open. If the material is too thick and you don't have strong scissors, then do each side separately. I got these strong scissors so I can do this very well here. Cut in the middle, cut this triangle towards this last stitch. Don't cut the stitch through. But you can also watch this if you haven't done pockets like that. I explain it very slowly and easily on my video, a zipper pocket. You can see it there again, in case if this is too fast for you now. So, when this is cut in well, I will stitch on my lining material, on my pocket part, along here, while the seam is lying towards this pocket lining piece. Just start anywhere in the corner where your first and your last stitches, but don't go back and forth, just because sometimes maybe you went too far and you have to open one stitch. Only stitch against it like that. Turn it around and do the same on this little one up here. You can see now that's lying flat there already. Now I'm only pushing that over like that, and I stitch here so that is held down. Again, I look where's my first stitch there. I start on my first stitch and I will finish on my last stitch, not any farther. You can stop earlier, that doesn't matter, but don't go any farther over it. Now you just take this pocket piece, pull it towards the inside, and first of all have a briefly look at this hole you did already for your pocket.
Depending on how good you are, I suggest you first go now to the ironing board. If it's an amaretta, be careful, you can only steam it, you shouldn't put the iron on, otherwise you got a nice design from your ironing on this material, but I think you might know this already. So now we need the zipper that we want to put into this pocket. First of all, I take it and just stitch this edge at the end together so it's closed, because afterwards it's always a bit fiddly. Now you have to look, which part do I have here? Is it the left or the right side? This is my front, because this is my neck piece, and that's my back piece on the shoulders. So zippers usually in pockets, they usually open or close towards the front. So that's the way I have to put this one in. And when I put zippers in, I always start on this end. So, as I mentioned before, I repeat it, go and iron this for you, or flatten it, however, because it will be easier for you. So, as I said, I start on this end, but first of all I look that I will have on each side of my zipper approximately the same space left over, because I want to make sure that I have no problems passing by with my presser foot. So I put this nicely even there, also here that I have on each side of the zipper the same amount. And I also don't stitch back and forward, that's not necessary. I just, because I'm coming back around and then I go over it. And now you see the widths that I've chosen, I can just have my presser foot running against my zipper, and that is as if I have a nice guide here anyway. And I go towards the zipper to open, and as soon as I see, well, I can't get past this anyway, then you first open it completely, but always leave your needle inside the material. Don't lift it up, otherwise you get a funny loop or the thread rips. And continue through all the way to the end in the corner. Again, my needle is inside the material. Now make sure that you don't get a funny angle. Make sure you get a right angle on your pocket here. Go over it, put the needle in the material, and continue going along this edge while your presser foot is just running alongst the zipper that you have there. And as soon as you see you have enough space back there to close the zipper, you close the zipper again. Here's a little thread. I'll get rid of it right away. And I finish by going all the way to the end. And as I didn't do a backward stitching, I just go over this end again, and now it's fastened on. So practically this pocket is finished, although you could say, well, everything's going to fall out. Well, okay, so we turn it. Now just take the end of it, flap it up, make sure you don't get it sideways, put it on the top, and you can see that's what the pocket's going to look like. Take all the parts up here and go tight, really tight along this edge you got here. At the end you just turn around, because there's the first side from your pocket to close. This is already finished. Now you do the same on this side, and you close it there. And there's your finished pocket. Now we got to do exactly the same to the other side. And why I like to do this as well on this particular cape that we have here is times are not so secure anymore. And I always like to have some zipper pockets somewhere to maybe have a coin or a 10 euro a piece in, because that is safer than in an open pocket. But now we continue. Meanwhile, I've done the second zipper pocket now on the other side, and we have to do exactly the same now on here, what we did on the fur part. We have to stitch this 12 centimeter long shoulder dart, and here you can see it well, very well, how this runs away. But also, when you, any kind of dart that you're sewing, never, never, ever start at the end where you got your point. Always start on the edge, stitching this up, because otherwise you never get a nice, smooth ending where the dart finishes. That was the first one. Now we take the other one, and you will also see this very well here, how this now runs the way the other side. See, now there's practically this little piece missing, but that doesn't matter. That's just being stitched over later. That's no problem whatsoever. So, and what do we have to do here now? Yes, the middle of the back from your neck. 1 centimeter. As I said, I put on your pattern, if you make this one, everywhere all the way around 1 centimeter. If you prefer a wider seam for all the edges, then you have to add the amount on you might want. If you want a 1.5, then don't forget only to add 5 millimeters. So I'm going all the way along here. Now you can iron the seam apart if you wish, but I prefer on this amaretta, because it always stays nicely down flat, to stitch it over on each side. That means I do lay the seam apart underneath, and then I just carefully, slowly, so I get a real nice even stitch, go along approximately 1 millimeter next to the seam that I have there. And I keep on looking underneath to make sure my seam is apart, that nothing has rolled over. That would not be the idea, that wouldn't be good. Here at the end I just turn it under the machine, do 1 stitch across, and now go down the other side of it. And that makes it really look very rich on this material when it's evenly stitched like that. I really like that. And as I said before, the seam is always flat. Yeah, no matter if you put this in a wash, this part or whatever. So look at it. That's what it looks like now. And now we're already there to put those two parts together, the big parts we got ready. One more little tip, in case if you have a thick material like I got here, a plush, a teddy, or a fur, then this particular seam we did on the shoulder dart, cut that one open on both sides. Cut it open, and if it's if you stitched a little bit too far, if it's very big, you can even slightly cut it smaller, like in my case where this one big seam is there from me patchworking the pieces together. Just cut it in until about 3-4 centimeters before you get to the end of the dart, and you will notice immediately just by touching it that it lies much, much flatter. So now we have to stitch the two parts together, and I'm starting first of all with the inner side. That means where you have your neck. Start on the bottom, but the smaller side we totally stitch now from bottom to the other side, which is the front as well, if you want to look at it that way. 1 centimeter, edge on edge. And now right away, look where you put your marks, because I said to you, put as many marks in as you wish. Here's my first mark. You might have one already after 10 centimeters. The better. The more, the better. This is so important in sewing, to put your marks where pieces got to be joined and added together. Then your sewing will always be accurate, and that's what you want, I believe. So there was my first mark. Immediately I go on the lengths to see where is my second one, where do I got to go to, and I just continue that way until I get to this particular mark here. That's very good, and we go on again. Edge on edge, 1 centimeter. If your material is pushing, don't forget, take a template to put under the foot And here I see already my next point. It's not really a point, but I have a seam there, and these two seams I got to join on top of each other. The same with my shoulder darts that I have there. They're all got to be in line, and the better that is. And then nothing is pulling. It will always be lying straight and flat if you continue on like that. So the middle is done. We're going towards the shoulder dart again. Try to lie it really nice and flat. Look again for your next point, for your next mark that you made yourself. And just continue all the way on that very long seam up and down the front. Always check the points. Very important. And your end, that nothing is left over. If you cut it both exactly the same size, then there shouldn't be anything left over. There we go. Now I'm looking once at the neck because we have a round part there. My amaretta is quite soft, but the fur is a bit hard. So on that round bit up there, I put a couple of little cuts in so it will not pull. Now you start on exactly that side where you started before, but you're putting the material apart, and you stitch over the thinner material which you will have. Maybe it's a lining, maybe you didn't even want it to be turned around, but definitely stitch on the softer, on the thinner material. So the thick material is lying towards the thin material, like in my case here, and that means you're stitching over the underneath lying seam over to flatten it down, to hold it down, and to really make it be firm forever. Because that is so important also for if I want the fur slightly to roll around onto that side to give it the look of that black fur edge. And I'm sure you've seen coats and jackets before where you see the fur sticking out on the edges, and it just looks very nice. So that's what I mean here. You look at that, you see my zipper, and you see the rolling over fur on that side. Okay, we're not finished yet. So put it again right side on right side together, as now we have to close the other side. But we will not start on the bottom this time because we want to do something else there first. So I start approximately 60 centimeters from the bottom up where one of my cuts is or anything. Because I have to get into this a little bit better in a moment to also stitch that topper part that I'm closing now. I also want to stitch against this, although stitch the seam down, the same thing what I've just done on the other side. And if I close it all the way to the bottom now, I will not be able to get into this with a machine. So just start anywhere you wish, as I said, maybe 50-60 centimeters from the bottom up. And now do your big round, which is the back part here. Exactly your 1 centimeter again. If you have any seams anywhere, put them apart, lie them apart, but keep looking for your points, for your markers, to go from one to the next, to always have it very even and very good stitched together. That's my back middle already here. And I take the seams apart, so they're also flat and not sticking up in the air or very thick at some points. That was my next point where I have to aim for. So I continue there. There is my next, on the fur I only made a point with a white pen because I didn't want to cut the fur in everywhere. But underneath is my little cut, and I know I'm absolutely correct with what I'm doing there. And on this side as well, I'm not stitching all the way to the bottom. I stop also approximately 50-60 centimeters away from the bottom. And now we have to stitch on the thinner part of the material exactly against it again with the seam lying underneath where we're stitching. But that's a little bit more fiddly because it's getting tighter and tighter while you go into this shawl now. And don't start stitching against it exactly where your first or your last stitch is there. Start about 3-4 centimeters higher up. Otherwise, later on you have a problem continuing the closing up stitch there. And here it doesn't go very fast. You must take your time, because the farther you get inside towards the neck now, the tighter it gets, and that's why it's quite difficult as well to see how I'm doing this here. I do it more by feeling. I gotta feel, is my seam lying underneath on the left side where I'm stitching on, and make sure you really have nothing rolling over here on the top, that you really have your seam flattened out totally. Now I hope I'll be soon in the middle, because then I have to turn around. As tight as this is, I'm not able to stitch all the way to the other end. This is impossible. Therefore, I would have had to cut it much wider to be able to do that. But I think I'm coming towards my middle here already. And as long as I get to about the middle, that will be perfect, or even 1 centimeter farther would even be better. But if I know I reach the middle here, then I know I also will reach it coming up from the other side. This is no problem. There is my middle, you can see it. And here I finish here. Now I carefully pull my coat out under the machine, as I've really tucked it in there well. And I go towards the other side. And then my seam will be lying on the other side, because I'm starting sewing the opposite way, as you know. So here it is. First I had my amaretta lying on the left, as you remember. Now it's lying on the right. That means I'm also stitching over on that right side there. Again, the start is not too bad, because I still got lots of room here. But the tighter and the higher I get into this, well, it's like a long tunnel. If I get in this tunnel, the tighter it gets. So I continue slowly. You can do this really carefully, bit by bit. There is no rush for you to do this. I'm checking again underneath to make sure my seam is really on the right side where I want to stitch it flat and not anywhere else. As you can see, I have to pull everything away, not to stitch anything onto somewhere else where it's not supposed to be. I know I should be getting towards my back middle where I finished with the last seam, and I can join them. Once more I have to grab underneath, push the seam away. I'm always feeling, you can feel it actually also from the top sometimes if you just touch it. And there is my back middle, there's my stitch where I stopped early on, and I'm pulling it carefully out from underneath the machine. And we're coming towards the last stepping here. So now there's only the 2 bottom pieces left over to be closed up. They're still open, and it really doesn't matter on which side you start now. But on one of them we will have to leave a hole. But now, first of all, I'm starting on that side on the bottom, closing this short 36 centimeter going across. I know with mine this always looks a bit funny with all my patchwork that I had there. I hope you're not bothered too much about that. So I turn the corner. And I'm thinking, should I leave my hole here right away or on the other side? That you must consider which side you want to choose. But it really doesn't matter. You can choose either side. But I definitely have to go now all the way to that stitch that I earlier on started or finished with on the other side to close these parts. Now here you see my start or my end from the other one. That's where I stitched over a little bit higher up, 3-4 centimeters, so I can really join those well together. So that side here is closed. Now we have to do the other side. And as I didn't leave a hole here, I will have to definitely leave a hole on the other side for turning this piece inside out. So there is my finish, you see that, and I leave a big hole, at least the width of a hand, because you have to put your hand, your whole arm into this to pull it through. So leave a big enough a hole. It also is good that you will not rip it when you're pulling all this thick, heavy material through. Even if you have a thick wool, as an example, that you would like to use, you got to leave a relatively big hole to pull it through. Better slightly bigger than too small, because you can do a lot of damage. So here's my marking point, and underneath is my little cut that I know has got to fit on top of each other. And I'm checking again. That's from my patchwork. One little seam opened up by accident because I patchworked and then I did the cutting and I forgot to close this one where I did the cut. Oh, it doesn't matter. I saw it early enough in time, so I just put some stitches on and we continue here. Again, there to the bottom, and now all we have to do is go across on the bottom to finish that hole off as well. That's the easiest part now, and we're practically done. And here, as we stitched against this, that was the very long side we did on the front. I'm also lying the seam over the way I stitched it down, and you can also feel it. That's the way it wants to lie and go. So you got no choice. You should leave it the way it wants to go. So now we should just cut these corners a little bit so they can come through better when I'm turning it. I do the same on the other side right away, then I don't forget. Just a little bit out so it doesn't get too thick and too heavy in the corners. So now look where your hole is. I've lost mine already, although I made it big enough. Where is it? Okay. Here it is. Okay. Put your hand in and first go to the opposite side, the longest way one. There's one short one, of course, now, and there's a long one. Go all the way to the end in your hand, grab the end, and slowly, carefully pull it through, not to rip your seam open that you do have there for the hole. That can happen so easy, you don't believe it. I like to kind of twist it when I pull this through, bit by bit, and really take my time. Otherwise, you wouldn't be the first one who rips into the material by pulling a jacket or whatever through. Now I take the short piece and I'm pulling it through, pushing all the pocket linings in and everything I got there. And now I got to slightly do the corners, which I just cut, but they got to come through nice. Must be sorted out like that. And that, of course, on the other side as well, because the last thing we have to do in a moment is closing that hole that we left for the turning. And when it's once closed, you don't want to say, oof, I forgot to push the other corner out. Then it's always difficult from the outside to get it in the position where you would like to have it. There you go. And that's the last one. Pushing it through, ribble a little bit with the fingers, and look how nicely that fur is rolling over on that edge. Gives it such a nice effect, including with this black zipper that I've chosen there. So you can take a needle and a thread if you want to, and finish this by hand, the hole. But I'm putting a black thread in the bottom now in my bobbin. I leave the beige that I have on the top. And now I do a very small, careful step by to close this hole. Make sure you're starting exactly in that corner where your last stitch is there. Do one stitch back and forth. Look that you have really 1 centimeter turned in the seam, the same on the amaretta or whichever material you've chosen, and go slowly, carefully along that edge. Let the hair stick over a little bit, but not too much, of course. Then you would see it from the other side very much. Really, so it's just the hairs are sticking over, and you're just catching with this particular thread just a 1 millimeter edge from both materials to close this hole. So that is it already. Now I'm trying to look through that I got no mistakes done anywhere. Look at this nice edge there. I haven't been once to the ironing board, only because I stitched against it that it's lying there so flat. So I have to get a brush the little hairs of my white amaretta off, and I'm going to put this thing on now and show it to you.
So here we are. My little cape is finished. The cooler days can come where I don't need a jacket yet, but I like to have something warmer around my shoulders. Here are my nice big pockets for warming the hands in. And if I don't like this, because it might not fit so nice with what I'm wearing underneath, then you take your little cape, turn it just once around over, put it over your shoulders. Now you see what I meant with cutting it slightly bigger, the black one, because now this is coming really nicely over here on the edges. And I got my little zipper pockets here, maybe for your handy, or maybe for some coins, something else you need. And otherwise for warming, you just put your hands inside again. However you like to wear it. But all I hope now is that you think that is a nice thing to do. I'm going to sew this little cape for myself. I wish you much fun and success. See you again. Bye.